In this series by What's Going On with Shipping, we examine the World Wars, Episode 1, World War Zero. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So those of you who don't know, besides being the host of What's Going On with Shipping and being a former merchant mariner, I am the chair of the Department of History, Criminal Justice, and Political Science at beautiful Campbell University in North Carolina. That's right, Campbell University, home of the Fighting Camels. Every semester, I have an opportunity to do an upper level class. Now, a few years ago, I tried this and it didn't work out very well, and I am rebooting it, trying again. And that is, I want to post every week a course that I am doing here at Campbell University and give you the oversight of what I'm doing. Every semester, I get to do an advanced upper level undergraduate course. And this year, I have a new course entitled The World Wars, where we take World War I, World War II, kind of jam them together and talk about that impact across history. It's not just a military history. It is a history on politics, on society, on economics, you name it. It is a war focused on conflict, not so much on military, although we are going to discuss military issues in it. This course is going to be bookmarked with another course offered by another professor at my university on the Cold War. And so I've done courses on World War I, World War II, but this is new. We're going to put both world wars together, and the time frame we're looking at is from 1898 to 1949. And what I want to do is week by week kind of take you through what the students are looking at. And if you want to follow along at home, you're more than welcome to do it. So for this class, I have two assigned texts. The first assigned text is this one right here, Hugh Strachan's The First World War. Excellent book done by Hugh Strachan. What I like about this book, 10 chapters, extremely well laid out, good for undergraduates who don't have a lot of experience about World War I. Plus, there's an accompanying series that goes with this, a 10-part series, so that the students can read the chapter, follow along with the video. It gives them a lot of information in which they can use. The second book we use on World War II is the second edition of Evan Maudsley's World War II, A New History. Now, there are tons of World War II books out there. I mean, literally, you can choose a variety of them. The reason I love Evan's book, now, I think there's problems with Evan's book. Let me be clear about something. I don't like some of his chapter lineups. I think the order isn't the greatest, and I actually flip some chapter orders in there. But what I love about the book more than anything else is that he acknowledges the war probably doesn't start in Europe, but starts in Asia, which is a key thing that I talk about in my class. So both those books provide the kind of textbook backing for it. Now, I'll supplement this with more books and more articles throughout the course of the semester. And as we go through this, I'll be posting books and recommended reading so that if you want to follow along, you're more than welcome to it. Plus, in the comment section, feel free, throw out questions out there. I'm going to try to answer as many of them as I can as we go along. We're actually in the second week right now, so this is episode 1, first week. So what do I do to get students interested in this? And you have to come across and basically get them to acknowledge that conflict is a big issue. But how do you understand conflict? So one of the first things I try to do is explain conflict in war to them. And to do that, you have to set up the different levels of war. And there are 3 levels of war. There's the strategic level, which deals with national policy and theater strategy. There's the operational, which deals with campaigns and major operations. And then there's the tactical level, battles, engagements, small units, and crew actions. And this comes right out of a joint publication by the U.S. Armed Forces. However, I think the political, the societal, the economic actually follows those same levels. Strategic, what's that monetary policy? What's the big issue that's happening across the nation? Operational level, what's happening down at the next level, and then tactical down on the individual level. So I want them to think about conflict on the multiple levels. Unfortunately, most studies of conflict tend to hit on the strategic level. Let's look at the big picture. Let's look at what the presidents, leaders, generals are all thinking. Sometimes we get all the way down the tactical level. That's the dirt. That is the individual soldiers. What tends to get missed a lot is the operational level, that kind of mid-level where you're executing operations and waging campaigns and major operations. So those are those 3 areas I wanted to do. Now, I don't want to jump into World War I and say, okay, let's identify all those areas. So instead, I took the class, which is about 10 students in it, and I gave them all a conflict that preceded the First World War. And what we did is they did a brief for me, a 1-page brief, that basically broke down the conflict into these levels. And to do that, I used a couple of resources. So we're in a very kind of brief period of time, beginning of the semester. Got to get students immediately immersed into this. So how do you do it? So the concept of World War Zero, the events leading up to World War One, is actually a narrative created by this YouTube channel, The Great War. And the Great War has been a week-by-week study of the conflict. They started in 2014. They obviously went to 2018. So every week they put out a video. But since then, they've been putting out these large kind of better imagery talking about the conflict. And one of the things they came up with was this concept of World War Zero. And World War Zero to me is a really interesting one. So they were looking at, for example, Russo-Japanese War as part of World War Zero, the Italian-Turkish War as part of World War Zero, the Balkans War as part of World War Zero. And I found that really interesting. These precursor wars that were fought that led you up to the First World War. So what I did is I took a series of conflicts. I took those three and a variety of others. I took them from a couple other sites, gave the students the video to watch, about a 20 to 30 minute video, and I had them identify what is the strategic level of the war, what's the operational level of the war, what's the tactical level of the war. And then across 2 days, I had the students brief on that. We talked about it, we laid it out, we discussed it, and what came out of that was all the precursors to the battles. And all the issues that were kind of boiling below the surface before World War One. We talked about big issues: Maine, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, but a whole variety of others. So I had students, for example, look at at the Boer War, the British versus the Boer. We looked at the three mentioned here: the Russo-Japanese War, the Italian-Turkish War, the Balkans War. We also looked at conflicts like the Franco-Prussian War, the Franco-Austrian War, so the Spanish-American War. So all these great conflicts they looked at, and what we saw was how each of these nations were starting to come in, and all the issues below the surface that were percolating over the course of 2 days. We really got a good handle. Then I dived them into chapter 1 of the First World War. They read that, and then we came back into class and talked about what were the underlying issues of the First World War, because again, this assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand is an event that I use the analogy: if I go back in time and prevent that from happening, do I prevent World War I from happening? And then we pose questions, and the question I posed to my class was the same question that was posed to me as a grad student: was World War I inevitable? In other words, was there nothing you could do to prevent World War I from happening? And I posed that to the students, and every student had an opportunity to talk about it, lay it out. Then we sat there and took the vote, and they decided, was World War I inevitable? And they unanimously declared that World War I was inevitable, which was the same response, by the way, my graduate level class at the University of Alabama came up with, at which point my professor went off on us. And we had a great discussion about the fact that nothing is inevitable and what could have been done to kind of get away from that. It was a great discussion. We got into everything, all the way into talking about Guns of August and Barbara Tuchman, to the Sleepwalkers, talking about Christopher Clark's book on how Europe went to war in 1914. It's a great discussion. It was one of the best discussions I've had in a long time. And the way we're going to run this class is not so much the traditional test, as you see, but a series of questions. I'm going to have a series of 7 questions during the course of the semester that I'm going to pose to the students, and we're either going to talk about them in class, or they're going to do a write-up on them, or they're going to brief on them, and that's going to be their grade. So I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you will follow along with us in the episode, and feel free, chime in the comments down below. I think it'll be a lot of fun to hear some ideas from people out there about this conflict and what is going on with it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, be sure to tune in and follow along, subscribe and like, so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come in. Hit that bell, and if you want, support the page. How do you support the page? Well, you can spread it across social media, give it a big thumbs up, or you can hit the super thanks button down below, or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly or yearly subscriber. Or if you got a kid, send them over to Campbell University. We can enroll them in the class and they can take it, or you can come. We'll take you anyone. There's no such thing as a traditional student anymore. Until our next episode, this is Sal signing off.